and welcome to today's monthly RPO Leadership Forum titled Transforming Recruitment with Storytelling. This is Lamis Aburama with the Recruitment Process Outsourcing Association and host of the RPO Leadership Forum. This is a monthly webinar series presented by RPOA partners on the third Tuesday of each month. If this is your first time, welcome. If you are a returning audience, welcome back. We're excited you could join us and hope you'll find the webinar informative. This webinar is being recorded and you'll receive the recording within 24 hours. We encourage you to ask questions during the webinar using the Q&A function. With these brief housekeeping announcements, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome our speakers for today's presentation, Patty Silbert and Alicia Curran with Aspirant. Aspirant is an RPOA member since 2016. We value their partnership and their support of the RPO Association. This is Alicia's first time on the RPO Leadership Forum. So help me welcome Alicia by saying hello in the chat. Patty has been recognized as an influential woman in RPO for 2 years since the launch of the Women in RPO program. This is her fifth speaking engagement with the RPOA, and we love having her. Welcome, Patty. Always great to see you, and I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Lamise, thank you so much for that warm introduction. Our agenda today is we'll go through our self-introductions here in a moment. We're going to be sharing with you storytelling and the definition of storytelling in recruiting and how it can transform recruiting efforts. We'll talk through design thinking in storytelling and why this really can help transform the way your recruiting team members reach their audiences, and then what you can expect if you follow the design thinking process. So welcome, everyone. Alicia, I'll turn it to you for your introduction, and I'll wrap it up there as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Curran with Aspirant. I am a marketing and innovation engagement manager with the organization. And my biggest passion in life is customer insights. So as you will be exposed to today with the process of storytelling, it's a unique tool that we and others in the industry use in marketing and innovation and across multiple industries. You'll see that the customer is at the center of everything we do. And a good story always has its characters. So the customer and the character are intertwined. So we can't wait to get you guys started with this process. And thanks so much, Patty and Lamise, for giving me this opportunity to be here today. And thanks everyone for the welcome.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm Patty Silbert. I serve as the Executive Vice President here at Aspirant's Talent Strategy and Acquisition Practice, a leading RPO provider. I've been with the organization just a little over 6 years, but a lot of my passion and focus has been around helping organizations build their employee value proposition and looking at ways that recruiting can really be transformed. So we're ready to dive into the concepts of this storytelling, and we're very anxious and hopeful that you're going to appreciate what you'll learn through this process. So with no further ado, we're going to move forward. And I really think it's important that we start with some basic foundational pieces that many of you have heard already, right? The latest jobs data shows that the great resignation brought on by the pandemic is still going on. There's been a near record high of 4.4 million Americans quitting in April, despite growing recession fears. But there remains a great number of jobs that still go unfilled. And we saw pre-pandemic was that employees often focused on their own careers, right? They were hopeful that the focus on the career would be about their professional development and ways that they were going to be able to grow. But as we move past the pandemic, employees are now prioritizing their physical and mental health and looking for jobs that meet their holistic needs, both internally and outside of work. People want healthy experiences. So when we think about that employee experience, health, both mental and physical, are going to be at the top of their list. And they're willing to leave jobs that put their lifestyles at risk. In a study that was done by Prudential, it was called The Pulse of the American Worker. Is this working? 42% of workers would quit their jobs if their employer didn't offer them remote or hybrid options long term. So this emergence of what Mercer is calling the lifestyle contract, this lifestyle contract is superseding the engagement contract. When organizations were really focused on employee engagement, it is now a shift to focus on this lifestyle contract. So for years, where companies were attracting and retaining employees based on the emphasis of the work or the type of work that they would be doing, because they believed that was motivating and psychologically fulfilling, today employees are looking for a new deal. It's one that promotes this healthy lifestyle. It fosters their well-being and it supports their lifestyles in many ways. And so with continued headlines of employees quitting at rapid rates, those headlines should be sending an alarming message to employers and recruiters that their EVP really needs to be sound, and they need to revisit that EVP message to ensure that they have innovative ways in which they can attract and hire this talent that is so elusive to many employers that are out there. And we have to also think about it's what the candidate really wants. We need to be able to attract passive candidates and move them into that active state. And we want to make sure that when we're engaging with those candidates, that we're really aligning the values and their own values into the story. And we know that recruiters need to use this art of storytelling techniques into the recruitment strategies. So what I want to do is sort of set us up to watch a video. This is a quick video. The sound will be a little low when it starts out, but I encourage you to turn up your speakers if you can on your end so that we can start with some of the foundational pieces around storytelling.
Every story has its beginning, its middle, and its end. But what makes a story great? A great story has a problem and a resolution. And in between them, there's another little but significant thing called conflict. Conflict is what brings those two together or breaks them apart. All of these things can be reviewed through character, tone, plot, and setting. However, a great story will have the one thing that will always reoccur. It is what drives these elements to where it is meant to be. And that is theme. For example, in Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli, there are many recurrent themes that are revolved around good versus evil, greed, adulthood, and many more. And other films like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly has an underlying theme that runs throughout the movie, and that is the power of deception. Every great story has a flawed protagonist, and every one of them has their own unique voice and unusual traits. Flawed characters are believable and relatable, and this is because they are given human qualities. The quality of being imperfect. Heroes of great stories knows what they want, the obstacles, and lastly, the cost that comes along. Great stories leave the audience wanting to know more. And doesn't require a happy ending, but rather leaves you fulfilled and satisfied.
So as we move into why storytelling for recruiting and transforming recruiting, we all love a good story, right? History itself is a system of tales, chronicles of events, parables, myths, and beliefs told to groups of people who then spread that story across both oral, written, and all types of mediums in order to continue to perpetuate that story's theme. And stories really capture our imaginations. And for that reason, compelling stories have great power in driving recruitment, but often leave the storytelling up to marketers and never think about how recruiting teams should adapt and really learn the power of oral storytelling or even written storytelling in the way in which they engage with candidates. So let's face it, superb storytelling can drive engagement with candidates and really convert them quickly into hires. And so as we go through this process, we're really going to simply teach what storytelling is. We want to make sure that there's a natural approach to recruiting candidates through storytelling techniques. We want to be able to influence candidates effectively, right? Hone those skills that recruiters really need to break down some of the barriers that a candidate will bring to them relative to their needs. And they also want to make sure that they need to have those skills. And through skill development is a host of tools that we're going to talk to you about today so that you're able to really transform the way that your recruiters go into the marketplace to engage. So now that we think about what's happening in the marketplace with what's in the mind of candidates or employees for that matter, the big question is how are we going to engage them and really convert them through? So we'll talk about the basics of storytelling. We're really going to use storytelling to identify roles and actions that really are solving a problem. When a candidate is coming forward, they're really bringing forward perhaps their own objections about why they would consider or even consider speaking to a recruiter. And we're going to show you how using empathy really drives that type of engagement, right? Because it is about how those candidates will interact within their environments. We'll start by defining the people, which is this candidate persona. And personas are really critical, a critical first step when you're trying to connect with the audience and really define their points of tensions, feelings, and actions. And empathy at the end of the day is really where people start to connect with you to understand what you're looking for to solve for that problem, that critical pain point. And this is where you start to really humanize the target audience that you're trying to reach. It's no longer about the job description and that long nebulous listing of requirements and skill sets. It's really about turning information about the organization and what the immediate candidate's going to experience when they come to interact with that recruiter, and obviously taking that experience all the way through to what the organization has to offer. So I'm going to let Alicia sort of take us through the next portion of this, where we talk through about that customer she mentioned in that candidate.
Thanks, Patty. And again, I did pose a question out there. Feel free to answer in the chat function if you get a moment about any share outs anyone might have with difficulty you've had or your organization has had recently recruiting in this ever-changing environment. So feel free to share out there in the chat function if you get a moment. But as I step us through the elements of storytelling, something that we do a little differently at Aspirant is that we base it in design thinking. And design thinking is truly a methodology that was born from Tim Brown from IDEO. And Tim very much so applied it to innovation and development within the IT space and engineering space. We've taken it and used it as a very human-centered design approach to understanding what's important to your candidates, what's important to that customer at the center. And in design thinking, there's this whole exploratory mode, I would like to say, or space that we take as we go through the entire circular visual that you can see on the left of your screen. We also take some time to establish what's going on, what's important, what are key drivers of behavior, and how can we better understand in those behavior changes, as we've seen with the Great Resignation, what's driving that? And as Patty illustrated perfectly, this need for taking care of oneself is truly an aha moment that you would discover in design thinking right around that exploratory and established phase. This is important to people to have meaningful careers and meaningful jobs in their lives. We then go to imagining and visualizing what success looks like. And finally, we validate that. And if you apply that design thinking principle that we have on the left, that is very much so a part of everything we do at marketing and innovation at Aspirant, to storytelling, what you can see is very much so we start the process with understanding on the right-hand side of your screen, who are the most important people in this story? What are their influencers? What are they hearing? What are they absorbing? What are they feeding back to those around them that are proposing different plot lines to them? Again, in the recruiting world, the plot lines are, here is what I have open. Does this interest you? But in just bulleting out what that position entails, the behavior change element is lacking there. So we really truly need to engage our candidates and our customers in the story. It is their story, and we need to be a part of the hero role to give them the reason to believe as to why they should be making these changes in their lives and in their careers. And finally, what does success look like? And how do we help them measure that success? Is everything turning out the way they expected it to turn out at the end of the story? And how can they help share out improvements to the process? And that really is the true beauty of storytelling, is that it never stops. It keeps going, and the story gets better and better as we evolve it. So if you can click me down one, Patty, that'd be great. If anyone, again, has comments or questions, you can pop them on chat. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. But just to break down the storytelling process, I've already top-lined it, but we do want to know what that candidate is all about. And that might seem like a no-brainer, but oftentimes we get resumes that come across our desk and we think, well, this person can do this because this is what they said they can do. Oftentimes, finding out what that character is motivated by is really truly what's going to change the course of action for them and for you. And again, this is all about the context. What is their backstory? What's their dream and vision for success? And how can you play a part in that acquisition of that dream and vision? The characters, again, there's the hero. We'd like to believe in life that we can always be that hero for those who are seeking our help and our guidance. There's also antagonists, and sometimes those are the most surprising people in the storyline. So stay tuned for that in a moment. The challenge is really this big barrier of making changes, which we all know behavior change is one of the hardest things to accomplish in the world of marketing and in the world of life. How do you change from one point to the next? And really telling the right story and giving the right guidance and mileposts is the way to do it. Again, you are the hero. That is your part. That is your role. And the path to resolution is your story to tell. And how can you make success happen and life changes be realized by these most important candidates? And again, lessons learned is that full circle evolution, reflection, and improvement upon the process. As Patty mentioned, we do have a few tools that we always love to share out with our clients and customers when we do teach storytelling. And what you'll see on screen right now are three of our most favorite tools that we use. One is the persona template or map. We also have the empathy map, and we have our task map. We like maps, and we like to visualize things to really contextualize where folks are coming from, what their need states are. How can we get inside more than just the words being said or the words on a piece of paper to what's driving motivations and behavior of that particular candidate or person that we are really trying to get to know better. And the persona is simply defined as who we're trying to connect with, but on a personal level. What motivates them? What are barriers to overcome? And when you start to peel back that onion, so to speak, and get into an empathy map, you can truly understand what they're hearing, what they're processing, what they're saying, and then potentially what others around them are hearing them say and reacting to. And as you develop that sense of empathy for all of the things that are coming into them and all of the things they're putting out, you can come to what we love to use to get to resolution, which is our task map. And in the center of our task map, we very much so focus on the one thing that needs to change, the one barrier that's tripping up the situation more than anything else. And it's hard to sometimes identify that, but if you use a couple of very simple techniques like the 5 whys or, thinking, feeling, doing. It's focus on what's keeping them from doing. Generally, it's what they're thinking and feeling. That will identify the key barrier. And what we try to do with this task map is move them from the left side, clearly current behavior, thinking and feeling, and doing, to future behavior. And that is all resolved with our propositions to get that connection point from current to future. We'd like to introduce you to an example. This is Kristen. She's a respiratory therapist candidate. She's currently looking for an opportunity to spend more time with heart patients. She's very much so been a part of a multidisciplinary team, but in the world of healthcare and healthcare providers, as we've seen in the past 2.5, almost 3 years now, her job is very complicated and difficult, but she does have bills to pay like everyone does. She has a family to support, and she has a career that she's trying to advance. So let's dig a little bit deeper, though. This is just the surface of Kristen at the moment. If Kristen were to tell us a little bit about herself, she's from Cleveland, Ohio. She's a single mom, and she has 2 children. She's looking for a change in her career, but not in her current lifestyle, because in spite of the fact that there's some frustrations in her current job, she does have some flexibility. She works for a university hospital as a registered respiratory therapist. She wants to be a part of an advanced team that has multidisciplinary arms for her own personal career growth, truthfully. But she does want to help patients more than she is today. She is not in her in her ideal spot at her company, at her healthcare facility, because her team is just stretched so thin, and doesn't have a supportive manager who's really interested in anything but staying the course and keeping the team afloat.
Alicia, I think we had a hand raised. Is there a question from Nicole? You may not be able to unmute, but if you want to put your question into the chat, we'll make sure that we're able to get an answer to you.
Terrific. Thanks, Patty. And I'll go a little slower. And Nicole, if you jump in on the chat, we'll see it and we'll respond to you. Kristen, again, if we were to put her at the center of our empathy map, she is thinking and feeling that she has to get out. And so again, with the Great Resignation, I think that was the general tenor of a lot of people in the past year, is that they just had to get out for their own sanity's sake, their own well-being. She very much so sees that her old teammates, her old schoolmates, even from nursing school, have moved on, and they seem happy, but her current team is not. And that is very disturbing to her personally, and is a huge barrier to her just happiness at work. She also is hearing constant complaints around her. Her day is a very negative day, even if she's done something successful in caring for her patients. Her team is just not in that space. And so that's just not a healthy environment for her at all. And finally, there's just too much work, and she can't keep up with the demands and the rigor of the schedule. And her friends at the other hospital are very happy. And so she really, truly wants to understand how she can make that move. Again, this is all going to start to feel repetitive, and all of these tools work together. We know she's overworked and she's unhappy. That's her current need state. We know she's looking for a new job. We believe she's looking for a new job. She should be. And her friends are happy at this other location. Why shouldn't she give it a try? She does have a lack of reassurance, though, that things will be better. She only has word of mouth from her friends. She's not sure if she does talk to that recruiter at XY, whether or not all of these things will come to fruition for her to solve her current problems and pain points. That is the responsibility of the recruiter of that new hospital, for Kristen to ensure and reassure that this is the right spot for her. Telling the story of her fit, of her achieving her goals and her motivations, is what's going to turn the tide for Kristen and encourage her to make that move to future state, which is only this new hospital organization can help her achieve her goals. And working there is only happening because the recruiter told the right story to get her to join and have confidence. Again, as we layer these tools around the storytelling, I call it the storytelling flower. It looks like petals to me of a flower that you would just one by one take off and say, check that box. Yes, told the right intro, understood these barriers. What are we looking to solve for? How can we better understand Kristen's pain points? The context really for her is that she is underwhelmed with where she's at. She very much so wants to make a change for her children and herself. The challenge is really seeing that clear value proposition. Why on earth would she make a change when she is experienced and well respected at her organization today, but sincerely is coming to a life moment where she's not sure she can take the negativity and the overburdened work environment. Your part, or the part of the recruiter for XY, really is to ensure and reassure. Tell the story in truth with the benefits of the new organization that you're looking to place Kristen in, and what her path is, what her opportunities are, all based upon the things she's told you prior about what hasn't been working at her current employer. And that path to resolution is the beauty, I think, of all of the stories that recruiters can tell, because you know those points. You know how to sell that organization, but selling it to the key points that matter to that person at that moment in time for them is really the magic of telling the right story at the right time. And as this becomes something that you do, or if you do this all the time, terrific. I'm sure many of you do, but you'll see, hey, if I ask these 3 questions in this sequential order, I can really understand what's happening with this candidate. Then I can start to layer in the points of what value this open position has for them. And again, this is all about capturing lessons learned. And I say capture them here. I mean, it's really test, repeat, rinse, repeat, test. If it worked and it seems to make sense when you tell the story sequentially in a certain order or with this type of candidate, then do so again and again, adjust where you need to. Any questions or comments? Terrific. And Patty, is this, I think this is where we transition again, but.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. So I think what we really want to make sure that we drive home is it's really taking the time in the beginning to build the right story for your candidate. It's a conversation, right? It's recruiters' ability to really forge those connections with candidates, to meet them where they are. It's less about what the organization is really focused on, to help build that trust and ways in which they can garner that relationship in a very early way. It's about making sure that you're creating some abstract details that become really meaningful and logical to hit them, and so that it creates that conversation flow. And it's about delivering information in a meaningful way that makes it memorable, right? Stories are really about what connect people together. It makes it interesting, so you can divert your audience attention away from the myriad of things that they're trying to solve for, and really break it down for them, right? Great stories really help us map out and take those individuals not on an emotional roller coaster, but on a really thoughtful journey for what they can expect when considering that. So when we talk through these tools, they're really important and critical components. And so we want to just make sure that the storytelling recap is that team members should use those tools all together, right? Break them down based on the functional roles that you recruit for most often. You want to make sure that you understand your candidates, and that's what storytelling does. It assists in that manner to understand what the needs of the candidates are. It's about ways of making really good connections, because it's not only about the story or the feeling the candidate had today, but what about in 3 months? What about in 6 months, where they can come back and reconnect with you? And we also want to just make sure that there's always this thought process of how you would use storytelling in your own recruiting efforts, and really transform the way that recruiting is happening today, because it needs to change, right? The candidate market is changing, and it's dictating the way in which we should be really thinking about that change. So what we've done is we want to offer up a tool about how to build a persona. It's a beginner's guide to creating candidate personas that are available to you. You can visit this bit.ly. This recording will be available to you. You can email myself or Alicia for access to that. And this guide will really begin the beginning stages of that for you. So we appreciate you being with us today. I know there's some questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Lemise, or do you want to sort of pose the questions to Alicia and I, and we're happy to kind of answer?
Yeah, and Alicia, I probably want to take this question. We have a good question in the chat about how do you do this at scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for that. It does seem like you could never in your day job handle this type of detailed view and organization of understanding your different candidates by persona type. We have this week a gigantic segmentation analysis survey going out for one of our clients to help us understand persona types by specific openings within the organization. So we're very much so going to see people who are currently in those positions, what they're thinking, feeling, and doing, what's important to them, what sold them on working for that organization, to very quickly algorithmically understand what an open position in that group should and would and could look like from a persona perspective based on the current people working there. So it's a really terrific, cool analysis that we're providing to our client real time to make it hugely at scale. And what I'll say is like 10,000 surveys went out yesterday to help us get to that segmentation analysis. So it can be done at a massive scale.
Following up on this question, Alicia, can you recap for us who is typically involved in developing these stories? Are recruiters involved? Is this something that you do internally?
Yeah.
Who exactly?
Again, a mix of both, because as we help our clients evolve these stories and put all of the plot pieces into play, it can come together in a number of different ways, but we very much so like to utilize the design thinking process from exploratory to establish to imagine, visualize, and validate to guide our efforts to build the story components. As we do that, what's involved in exploratory, let me just take a second and explain what we do. We go and do one-on-ones, we do focus groups, we do primary research that is quantitative in nature using one of our proprietary tools to do some very quick surveying to understand what's the temperature check out there with either candidates who are looking or internally with people who are filling some similar roles. Then again, as I just said, with this recent survey we launched yesterday with 10,000 respondents, we will find out en masse what's great, what maybe could use improvement, and how both internally some changes can be made to reach those improvement points, but also externally how we can create a sell story for new candidates. And in this case, with this client, we're actually building a microsite for them that will help their recruiting team of, at the moment, 40 for these particular positions, but a team of about 140, Patty, to utilize this tool to tell a better story of the organization. And so we'll hit all the components of what's important to potential candidates within that microsite.
How long would the process take as an estimate?
Yeah, for that type of initiative, just based on some of the unique qualities of that client, we had mapped it at about 16-week process of 4 months. If it's a smaller project with less than 10,000 people to survey and hundreds of different recruiters working with the system, you can cut that time a bit in half. But generally in my practice, we like to do our projects, design thinking projects, at about a 10 to 16 week time frame.
Very good. And Patty, is it possible to drop that bit.ly link in the chat for participants?
Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And I think I'm sorry, one question we had was the 3 questions, and I can't remember who posed that question, but I wasn't sure what the 3 questions were in reference to. If that person can repeat their question.
Yeah, I remember seeing the question, Alicia, and I don't recall what that was referenced. It was when you passed it to Patty, but I don't recall what the context was.
Okay. If it wasn't, if it's been passed over, that's fine. That's terrific. And we are happy to, show and share anything in addition to the storytelling process that you guys are interested in. We do have a passion for telling stories in the marketing and innovation practice. That's what we do every day. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions further.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. This has been fun. It's fun to hear about creative thinking and storytelling. One of my favorite storytelling that I see on TV more often is the stories by Airbnb. I don't know if you see the commercials. I think they do an incredible job in sharing stories about their properties and people who stay. So,
well, now more than ever, I think what we've found in this industry, and again, the client that we're serving and building this microsite for with the massive survey, is that lifestyle and taking care of oneself is a critical factor in selling an organization in an open position. And so we are trying to tell a beautiful story about that organization and their positions that are open. So I encourage everyone to just be creative and tell the beautiful story that you can tell.
All right. Well, if I may take it back and tell the story of RPOA, and I do want to share a couple of announcements with the participants, especially if it's your first time being on one of our events. I do want to introduce you to the RPOA. And first and foremost, we are a member-driven organization, mission-driven organization, serving the entire global RPO ecosystem and striving to be the place to go for RPO. I'm looking at my screen here, if I can flip to the right one so I can change the slide here. Our mission is to nurture a collaborative community where thought leadership can be created and curated to educate the marketplace about RPO. As an organization, the RPOA serves the RPO ecosystem. This includes anyone in talent acquisition interested in RPO. So if you think of the persona, as Alicia and Patty mentioned, this can be RPO providers, RPO buyers, talent acquisition, technology providers, and so forth. So everybody in this space is considered part of the ecosystem with different personas. We produce high quality content in collaboration with corporate members and sponsors. Our content is focused on talent acquisition trends and best practices for the RPO community. We host 2 active blogs, produce a monthly newsletter, and offer monthly free resources and webinars. First, the RPO Leadership Forum is a monthly webinar series scheduled for the 3rd Tuesday of each month. These are 30-minute webinars presented by RPOA members, and today's webinar is part of this Leadership Forum. Next month, we have our Orion Talent, our member, presenting another webinar on the red flags to avoid with RPO. The second webinar program is the RPOA Expert Panel. And in July, on the 14th, we have a panel on total talent. I invite all of you to sign up for all these events are on the website. You can find them on the events page on the website. And you can find the recording of any previous webinar on the RPO Academy. I also want to invite you to explore the RPO Voice blog for insights from top RPO experts. On October 2nd through the 4th, the RPOA is hosting its 3rd annual conference. This is the first time we're doing this in person, and registration now is open. We also are looking for speakers, and you can find all this information on our website. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Please stay connected, stay engaged, and stay informed of what's happening in the talent and RPO world by tuning into the RPOA, the place to go for RPO. And with that, I do want to thank again our speakers, Patty and Alicia. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for attending. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, everyone.